Welcome new and old friends. My name is 242, and today 42 got us 2 Christmas stories. She even borrowed some other narrators to help bring them to life. So, turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. My parents leave a few crucifixes in my room every night to help me go to sleep without the apparent boogeyman I talk about all the time. This does not help because the boogeyman snaps the crucifixes in half to reach me. Today I went Christmas tree shopping. Something horrifying happened. By BlairDaniels. Growing up, I never went Christmas tree shopping. We had a fake tree from the 90s that sat in our basement, only to come out in an elaborate assembly ritual every year. Sorting through 100 plus plastic branches took hours, but it was something we were supposed to be grateful for. Just be glad you're not out in the freezing weather or trying to haul a 50-pound tree onto the roof of the car, my mother would say. When I moved into a place of my own, though, I decided to put an end to this nonsense. We're going to get a real tree this year, I told my boyfriend Robert. We only had a 600 square foot apartment, but I was determined. We'd get a tiny, skinny little thing to rival Charlie Brown's if we had to. So one December evening, we went out to the local farm to choose our tree. I'd never been Christmas tree shopping before, but as soon as we arrived, I knew I loved it. Pre-cut trees were lined up in rows, each held upright by their own stand. Spaced so close on the grass that they formed a dense forest. Edison light bulbs hung overhead, casting a warm golden glow. The weather was weird that evening. Unseasonably warm and foggy, and the way the lights dispersed through the fog, silhouetting the trees, looking like a shot from a Hallmark movie. "It's so cool," I whispered to Robert.
Have you really never gotten a real tree before?
Yep, never. "Hey, what's that?" I asked, pointing to the end of the field. There was a large plastic roll of something, and standing next to it, a man. He looked very fitting here, with his flannel shirt and lumberjack beard.
Netting they put on the trees to keep all the branches in so you can transport them more easily,
he replied. "Oh, cool!" I took him by the arm. "Let's go find our tree." We started down a narrow aisles. The air smelled like pine, like that one candle Mom always burned around Christmas time. Robert tried to match my enthusiasm, but eventually seemed bored, lagging behind me as I ran through the place like an excited little girl. I finally stopped in front of a particularly beautiful tree. Its branches were thick and lush, and the fragrance of pine was strong, filling my nose. Slowly I reached out to touch it. The needles were surprisingly soft and pliable under my fingers. Nothing like the shiny plastic ones I'd seen all my life. "Robert, come here, I think I found..." I stopped. Robert wasn't behind me. "Robert?" I glanced around, but all I saw were the pine trees. Rows and rows of them, like a thick forest all around me. The light bulbs buzzed above my head, their soft golden glow dispersed in the thick fog. "Robert, where are you?" I hurried down the aisle, needles scraping at my jacket. He couldn't have gone far. Probably started looking at memes on his phone and didn't even notice I was a mile ahead of him. "Robert!" I called again. No answer. I pulled out my phone and shot off a text. "Where are you?" When no reply came, I sighed angrily and continued towards the rolling netty things. Maybe he was waiting for me there. But my sense of direction must have been messed up because when I rounded the corner, there were just more trees. I pulled out my phone to call him, and that's when I heard the footsteps. Oh, thank goodness! I whipped around trying to pinpoint the source, and then I saw it, a flash of motion between the trees. It wasn't Robert. It was the lumberjack guy that I'd seen standing next to the netting. He was the next all over, slowly, methodically walking through the grass, as if looking for something. Maybe I can ask him if he saw Robert. I hurried down the aisle until I was several feet behind him, running parallel. I sucked in a breath and stopped dead. Something was swinging in his hand, something heavy, glittering gold in the light swinging above our heads. An axe. I stood frozen, watching until he turned the corner and disappeared among the trees. Of course he would have an axe. That's how they cut down the trees, right? Never mind that these trees are already cut down. Maybe he needed to, I don't know, trim them or something? Maybe? A scream echoed out on the other end of the field. My heart plummeted. Instinctually, I lurched forward to run towards the scream to see if it was Robert. Except I couldn't. I looked down to see that a belt loop of my jeans was snagged on one of the needly branches. Oh, come on. I quickly reached down and unhooked it from my pants. Then I took off running down the aisle. But the aisle seemed so much narrower than before. I couldn't run that fast with the branches reaching in from both sides, clawing at my legs. A corner lay up ahead, and as I came up to it, I prayed I'd see the parking lot at the other end with Robert waiting for me. I didn't. Ahead of me there was more trees, like I was stuck in some sort of Christmas tree maze, like they were rearranging themselves to block off all the exits. The aisles were impossibly narrow now. I had to stop running so that I wouldn't trip over the branches extending into the path. The progress was slow, but I kept going, leaping over branches, needles scratching at my face, snagging on my jacket. And then I heard a sound. It was coming off to my right, a sort of rolling sound, like something round being turned over and over. I ran over to the impossibly thick tangle of tree branches and peered out. More trees, but beyond them, I could see the checkout station, with the roll of netting for packing the trees. The lumberjack man was there, packing something. It wasn't a tree. My stomach lurched as I saw what looked like a body being wrapped in white netting. The body of a man, wearing a black jacket and a striped hat. I pushed myself through the hedges, the branches stabbing at me, scraping so hard against my arms that they drew blood. And then, finally, I popped out on the other side. If the checkout station was there, I knew the parking lot was to the left, so I kept going, pushing myself through the tangled web of branches until I was bloody and bruised on the other side. I locked myself in the car and then called 911. By the time police arrived, the man was gone, and was Robert. Both had disappeared, and the patch of Christmas trees looked just as magical as they did when we arrived. The police have been searching for Robert for the past 5 days. Nothing has come up. No evidence, no clues, no body. I know in my heart that he isn't with us anymore. His family's still holding on to hope, but I know what happened to him that day. But sometimes I wonder if there was a reason we haven't found his body yet. Maybe he was put in the netting for a reason. Maybe that farm doesn't only sell trees. After the procedure my husband made me get, I felt more free than before. No silly emotions to get in the way. I wanted him to feel this way too, but I don't remember how the procedure went, so I put the ice pick to his temple and swung the hammer down. When the clock strikes midnight on Christmas Day, you better be asleep. By Theeaglestrikes. Perhaps I should start from the beginning. I was a little disgruntled when I was given an assignment in the village that's notorious for being Finland's most desolate place. Palanka, look it up. It is certainly not the location that comes to mind when people think of Christmas. Lampa is the popular tourist destination in Finland. I was sent to Polak with a cameraman to interview residents for a fluff piece about remote villages. I was a journalist from the sunny city of Los Angeles. The two places are worlds apart, and we were supposed to be there for a month. An entire month. Moreover, the month was December. I had to spend Christmas in the middle of nowhere. The year was 2005. I was a young woman. That's a good thing in the media industry. At first, however, it was a little rough. You have to do the stories that nobody wants to hear before you get the big ones. The first few weeks in Palanka were tiresome. I was bored. My cameraman, Steven, was bored. The residents I interviewed were bored. We were staying at a small B&B. The couple running the establishment were actually very friendly. That's why my interview with them was so unexpectedly distressing. I've left out their names for legal reasons. It's nearly Christmas Day, I said. Are there any festivities planned? The village is so quiet.
Oh.
The husband said.
Yes, Christmas Day is celebrated, but it is also feared.
Feared? What do you mean? I asked, smiling at what I assumed to be either a joke or a Finnish man's broken English.
I think I should warn you to treat that day differently in this village.
He said.
Please, Heather, make sure you and Stephen are asleep before midnight on Christmas Day. Do not wake until 6 a.m. at the earliest.
Why is that? I pressed, trembling. At this point, it was only the husband's new sinister demeanor that gave me cause for concern. As he spoke, his breath seemed to fill the air with an icy chill. His brown eyes, which had previously seemed so warm, were filled with a darkness that haunted me to my core.
We do not stir between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. on Christmas Day.
He repeated. The wife sat there quietly. Her smile had rapidly departed her face. I wrapped up the interview and Stephen teased me relentlessly over the next few days.
What did we think? Evil Santa? Krampus?
Stephen inquired chokingly. Stop it, Stephen, I scolded. I'm not scared of anything supernatural. I'm scared of him. He seemed so friendly for the first few weeks. Did you see how cold and robotic he became?
They're just superstitious people, Heather.
Steven said.
Well, we'll just have to party a little more quietly in our room when the clock strikes midnight, won't we?
What? I replied, gasping. You're not going to disobey his rule. I don't want the creepy couple to come in here and hack us to pieces. Steven smiled, wrapping his arm around me. He gave me a soft peck on the forehead.
Mwah. You've not gone off me, haven't you?
Boop. He asked, affectionately bopping my nose. Nope. For that to happen, I'd have to fancy you, I replied, grinning. He was an asshole, and there was no doubt about that, but Steven did have a way of putting me at ease. Our flirting didn't have any real depth, but I trusted the guy. I trusted that I was just being silly. There was nothing to fear. They were just a friendly, superstitious couple. Still, that night I saw the old man's black, haunting eyes in my dreams. I wasn't fully convinced by Steven's words. But I tried my best to move past the uncomfortable interview. The husband returned to his pleasant self over the coming days. Christmas Eve was actually surprisingly fun. The wife cooked a feast as we were the only guests at the B&B, and the four of us danced to festive music. I decided the frightening interview had been a misunderstanding.
Have you had enough to eat and drink?
The wife asked later in the evening. Yeah, thanks, I replied. The meal was delicious.
Thank you, dear. But it is now 9 p.m.,
she said.
We must all go to bed.
Steven snorted with laughter.
Careful, lady. I don't know you that well.
I smacked him in the arm.
This is later than we usually retire on Christmas Eve. We have taken a risk to give you a pleasant evening. Now, please, we must all go to sleep.
The husband said curtly.
I thought you said midnight.
Steven replied, swigging his drink.
You must be asleep by midnight.
The husband explained.
I have no doubt that 3 hours is more than enough time to drift off. But it is better to, err on the side of caution.
I shot Steven a look. He knew my looks well.
All right, okay.
Steven drunkenly slurred, raising his hand.
You're the man.
He giggled obnoxiously as we climbed the stairs to bed, and I apologized profusely to the couple, but they shrugged it off. They understood that Steven was simply a little too inebriated. I felt guilty for previously being so creeped out by the husband. He had returned to his friendly self. In hindsight, I realized he was probably just relieved that we were going to bed early.
Don't be so sour.
Steven chuckled, hugging me from behind. I pushed him off, clambering into bed.
Wait, you're not seriously going to sleep, are you?
Steven laughed, looking at his watch.
It's 9:14, Heather.
I'm respecting their one rule, I replied, tucking myself under the duvet.
Suit yourself.
Steven shrugged.
I'll just watch TV on the lowest volume and keep drinking.
Please get in bed, I requested.
I'm sure I'll pass out before midnight.
He chuckled.
Don't worry, I won't get us in any trouble with the spooky owners.
I don't remember falling asleep. What I do remember is waking up. That, in fact, is something I cannot forget. I opened my eyes. There was some sort of commotion outside the window. I checked my alarm clock on the bedside table. 4:07 a.m. I had woken up too early. I had a vision of the terrifying old man. I pictured him charging into our room and butchering us in our beds for disobeying his rule. "Stephen," I whispered into the darkness. He wasn't in bed. He wasn't in the armchair in front of the small TV. He wasn't anywhere in the room. I heard footsteps outside. Snow was crunching beneath their feet. There was a muffled voice. It sounded like screaming. I scrambled out of bed and ran to the window, tearing the curtains open, and saw something that still haunts me every waking and sleeping hour. Wandering through the snow, an 8-foot-tall abomination left a trail from the front door of the B&B. It was a hulking figure, unlike any earthly creature I've ever seen. Its skin was black. I still don't know whether I was more horrified by this monstrosity or the half-alive body of my cameraman that was dragged through the snow. Stephen would have been able to see me standing in the window, but his eyelids appeared to be sewn shut. I realized his mouth also was sewn shut, which explained the muffled screams. He was missing all 4 of his limbs, but there was not a spot of blood on him. It seemed his limbless torso had also had its wounds neatly stitched up. The only mess he left behind was a yellow trail of urine. I clasped my hand to my mouth, futilely attempting to mute the sound of my tortured wail. It was no use. The creature stopped walking. Unclenching its right claw, the being dropped Stephen's nearly lifeless body into the snow. The demonic creature slowly turned around to look at the window. Perhaps it had not even heard me. Perhaps it had sensed that, like Stephen, I was not in bed. I had broken the rule. The being's face was crimson red and floated in the center of its pitch-black head. The thing had no eyes, but I know it saw everything. It somehow sensed I was awake. The creature's mouth was stretched into a wide, toothy grin that curved from one side of its face to the other. I unleashed a primal scream into the sweaty palms of my hand. My eyes swelled with tears as I stared into the featureless face of the thing I was sure would kill me. The being started walking back towards the bed and breakfast. I leaped away from the curtains, tripping backwards over the bed. I needed to fall asleep, but I only had seconds to do so. Even if I hadn't been in a state of sheer panic, it would have been nearly impossible to achieve that. Suddenly, I had an idea. It was a bad idea, but it was the only option. I knew how to make sure I wouldn't be awake when the creature reached my room. I had to knock myself out. I could have held my breath, but that would have taken too long. I heard the front door of the building open and close. There were heavy footsteps on the creaking floorboards of the downstairs hallway. I did a dangerous thing. Obviously, it's not something I'd advise anyone else to do. I could hear the stairs creaking. The creature was getting closer. My heart was pounding. I hoped I would pass out from fear. I backed away from the window to get a running start. Then I sprinted towards it. At the last second, I lunged for the windowsill, ensuring that my head made contact with the sharp corner. When I woke, it was morning. It worked. My crazy plan worked, and I was alive. I had an obnoxiously large lump on the side of my head, but I was alive. The bump didn't kill me, and the creature didn't kill me. I thought for a fleeting moment that the whole thing might have been a dream, but when I clambered to my feet, I received a horrifying confirmation of what had transpired during the early hours of the morning. There was a trail through the snow. It was the width of a human body. It led from the village and vanished beyond the visible horizon. Stephen was gone.
Merry Christmas.
The somber voice came from behind me. I turned to face the old man, who was standing in my open doorway. It was so many years ago, but I don't remember opening the door. Perhaps the creature entered my room. Perhaps it checked that I was not awake.
I bought a bus ticket to Helsinki Airport.
The old man said.
Just one.
I didn't say a word to the old couple. I left Stephen's things behind. I told our company that he went missing. There were search parties, police investigations, and so on. He was never found. 17 years later, I don't travel. I know I'm far away from Polka, but I still dream of that hideous, red-faced creature. I fear Christmas, just as the old man did. I live in Los Angeles, but I still don't stay up past midnight on Christmas Day. After a long, hard day, I entered the dark house, going into my bedroom and curled up with my wife. A flash of lightning showed my wife tied up and gagged in the corner, desperately trying to get my attention. And with that, my friends, our time together is coming to an end. First, I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas or a Happy Holidays. Whatever you celebrate, I hope it's full of joy and less fear. And of course, I'd like to thank the two writers who let us read their stories this evening. Both were full of Christmas cheer that quickly became Christmas fear. Thank you both, you did an absolute amazing job writing these. And of course, I had some narrators help me bring these to life, so let me name them off for you. In the first story, I was joined by Phoenix Fire, who played the doomed boyfriend. In the second story, the quiet wife was Creepy Clown Girl. The warning husband was played by Spooky Spider. The doomed Steve was played by Silver Underworld Stories. And the old man was played by PA Nightmares. As always, thank you all for joining me to tell these stories, and if you heard any voices you like, all their links are down below as always. Now, if you enjoyed these stories, hit the like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, please subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. And of course, if you'd like to help this channel/podcast grow, share it with anyone who might enjoy it. And if you'd like to help in other ways, I do have Patreon, merch, PayPal, and memberships on YouTube. And I will never ever expect any of this, but I will always appreciate it. Last but never least, I would love a comment. And this is our last Sunday word of the year, so let's make it a little fun. On screen right now is everyone who left me a comment last week. Thank you guys as always. I seriously look forward to these. Now, on to this Sunday's word, which I just thought it'd be kind of fun to unite and join together and use the word unity. So write me a comment down below using this word, or at me at Twitter using @242reads, and you'll be in next week's video/photo. Last but never least, thank you so much for watching. And Happy New Year. Next video's on the 1st of January after all. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.